Jaylen Brown with the flush. Tatum the drive. Tatum the finish.
It is banner 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here at TD Garden after the Celtics 127-102 blowout win over the Knicks to keep their season alive. One of my favorite games that I've ever watched in this building. Thought the crowd was incredible. The energy with the players was incredible, and to respond the way that they did with their backs against the wall, with the announcement that just yesterday Jayson Tatum underwent a season-ending Achilles surgery. Obviously, devastating news for him, for his friends, for his teammates, for the organization, and I think they kind of channeled that and had one of their most inspiring performances yet with this group. Blowout performance, lots to love, lots to be encouraged by. I am going back to 4 encouraging things, which I couldn't do after game 4. It did not feel appropriate after the loss, and more importantly, after the loss of their franchise cornerstone. But we're back in action, back in business. I will chat through 4 things, and then also I'll share why I think I'm going to be back sitting here for game 7. My faith in this team is a lot higher than it was a couple of games ago, despite the fact that obviously circumstances have changed. They don't really have pressure on them anymore. Jayson Tatum's done. They were trailing 3-1 in the series. Nobody would have picked them to win at that point. I think game 4 kind of changed everything about this team. Everybody started talking about the offseason and offseason moves and trades and all of that. And here we are, just a couple nights after that. And I suddenly have a little bit of a different perspective. And so I'll start at the top. First thing that I think was just awesome about this game was the way that Jaylen Brown approached it. He has had opportunities over the years that I think mostly about the Eastern Conference semifinals in 2023. Sorry, the Eastern Conference finals in 2023 against Miami. And that game 7, first couple plays of the game, Jayson Tatum goes down, sprains his ankle, and he's basically a shell of himself the rest of the way. And Jaylen had one of the worst games of his career. He said it as so, after the game. He said, I let the city down, and it fueled him to come back in the following year, wins finals MVP, and kind of redeems himself. He had another opportunity tonight to kind of show what he can do in Tatum's absence. And already this postseason, his best game so far this playoffs came in game 2 versus the Magic. That was when Tatum missed that game with the wrist injury. And he had 36 points on 12 of 19 shooting. And this game really resembled that in a lot of ways. He didn't have 36. He had 26 points, 12 assists, 8 rebounds. He was a plus 28 in his minutes. And probably the most impressive side of what he did was on the defensive end. And so what was most impressive to me was his approach to only take 17 shots with Tatum out. He could have put it all on his back and said, hey, I'm going to go for 40. It's the only way to kind of keep our season alive. He didn't. You could tell from the first play of the game that he was looking to, facilitate. He was looking to kind of get a nice offensive flow, push the pace. And Derrick White carried a lot of the load, and I'll talk more about him. But from a mindset standpoint, you could tell that he approached this one right. He didn't feel like he had to be the hero. He didn't feel like he had to do it all on his own. And in turn, he put together one of the most complete games that he's played this season. And in a critical moment, and to do it on both ends, he never lost focus, diving out of bounds, going after loose balls. You could just tell that he did not take a play off in this one. And obviously that's always the goal, is right, to minimize the amount of plays you take off. But it's human nature, especially when you play the minutes that he plays and the shoulder the load that he does. But in this one, you could just see the desperation. You could see the pride. And it starts with him, because ultimately, now that Tatum is out, he's their guy. Like, he's going to be their guy next season. There's a ton of responsibilities, a ton of pressure on him to lead. And tonight, I wrote about it this morning, but this was an opportunity for him to show that he can thrive as the number 1 guy. And he's done it over the years. Like I said, his best game so far in these playoffs has been without Tatum. And a lot of people thought no Jayson Tatum means that now OG Anunoby is going to be on Jaylen. They're going to put even more pressure on him. He's going to lose the ball even more. But really, when he has these games with all the live ball turnovers and the erratic drives, usually it's less about what the defense is doing. It's less about, they're doubling him and throwing some crazy scheme at him that he doesn't know how to handle. And it's more about the way that he's approaching the game. And he's kind of forcing the issue a little bit too much, or playing outside of the flow of the offense. I thought in game 4, he didn't really play within what the Celtics were doing. And part of it was that they were doing something that was not super sustainable. Like, the shot making from Tatum was not going to be sustainable through a whole game or a series. And you saw that catch up to them later on. But in this one, he did it within the flow of the offense. And again, 26 points is not a mind-boggling number for him at all. But it's definitely the best 26-point game that I've seen him play, because he did everything for this team today when they needed him most. So the encouraging thing for me is not just tonight. It gives you a glimpse of the future of what he can look like the rest of the series. And maybe it's a series that will go one game. I think it's going to go two. But also beyond that, it gives you a glimpse of what he can look like next season. Because everybody's talking about what is this team going to look like without Jayson Tatum. And I really, truly believe that he is going to surprise a lot of people that have doubted his ability to be the number one option. There are obviously limitations to his game. There are limitations to everybody's game. He's going to have lows. There's going to be tough moments when he kind of deals with all the pressures that come with being the number one guy that opposing teams scheme for. But I also think that he's going to surprise a lot of people, because he's a guy that steps up in big moments. We've seen that time and again. And, when he plays at his own pace within this kind of flow state, I love watching it because it's so obvious. You can tell right away, is he in flow state or not? You don't always have that with players. With him, it's really evident just as a spectator. And in this game, he had it. And I think you're going to see him find a rhythm and find a flow as the number one guy for this team, both in this series and next year as well, because it does look like most likely Tatum is going to miss the entirety of next season. His dad today, per Mark Spears of ESPN, placed an 8 to 9 month timeline on him, which would mean that he'd come back a little bit before that. And it's sometime next season, but I've spoken to surgeons. Everybody's talking to Achilles experts. Like, there is a broad range here. So in any case, there's going to be a lot of load on him, and that's where things are going to have to start. Number two encouraging thing that I saw in this one is Derrick White. And obviously Derrick White is the guy that I think everybody has the least qualms with probably on this team. Just always kind of plays within himself, always kind of takes good shots and makes good things happen on both ends. I thought an underrated story was that he actually kind of struggled in game 4, especially on the defensive end. And some of that was just mismatches. Some of it was just, they just didn't have it as a group, and that usually is a little bit contagious. He comes out in this one, and it honestly kind of gave me chills. One, because I know how close of a friend he is to Tatum. They're one of the duos on this team that's very obvious to us in the media when we're in the locker room, when we're watching them post game, and just I think everybody knows that they're very close. And so you think from a human level, he sees his good friend go down with this just career-altering injury that everybody knows is one of the worst injuries that a player can suffer. And he comes in and he just is just incredible from the jump. 34 points for him, a 9 of 16 shooting, 7 of 13 from 3. Most of the damage done in the first half, early on, like they really didn't have much of an offense, but Derrick was hitting everything, and that was kind of similar to what he was doing in the beginning of game 4. But there are a lot of questions around, do they have enough without Tatum, right? Do they have enough to continue here beyond just tonight? Can they win game 6? Can they win game 7? Can they win the series and move forward? And then what, right? Derrick White's going to have to become a star for this team for that to happen. You're pretty much down 2 guys, 2 of your top 3 scorers, right? Kristaps Porzingis, a shell of himself throughout this entire postseason, and especially in this series, and especially tonight, really rough 12 first half minutes from him. He was a minus 12 in a game that everybody else was a plus double digits. And Joe Mazzulla said at half, afterwards that he basically couldn't breathe. And so they made the decision together that he wouldn't play in the second half. And Luke Kornet played in his place and was just incredible. And I'll get more to that. But they're down Porzingis effectively, and they're down Jayson Tatum, and that's 2 of their top 3 scorers. Who else is the top scorer on this team, right? Right now in this postseason, Derrick White and Peyton Pritchard are next up. And so you are going to need to see Derrick White to continue to put together these kinds of performances. He's a great 3-point shooter. He was 7 of 13 tonight. He's been a great 3-point shooter for this team. He's now the franchise's all-time leader in 3-pointers made in a single season. He set that record this season, and he hits clutch ones. Everybody knows that, right? That's his reputation. That's been a big part of his game for a long time, and especially, last year's playoff run, he had so many big quintessential moments during the season he does. And so when there's this question around where are they going to get the offense, I still think it's all about the defense. And tonight they held New York to 102 points, and they fouled out Jalen Brunson. And there was a lot of good things they did as far as attacking those guys too, but they're still going to need to generate points. 127 for them in this series is an incredible amount. And you look at the top, who was their leading scorer? It was Derrick White, right? Who had just a monster performance. And they really, really needed it, because early on it was looking a little shaky. I started thinking to myself, I don't know if they're going to be able to pull this out. I started thinking, I think this might be it. This might be the last game of the season. And Derrick hit threes that gave them a fighting chance. And then from there, other guys kind of took on and took over and kept this thing afloat. So am I surprised that Derrick White just scored 34 in this game? No, we've seen him do it time and again. He scored 30 points in the first game of the playoffs against the Magic. He was massive in a closeout game against the Heat last year. I think he had a 40-point game as a Spur. So he's been doing this for a long time. And obviously, in some games, he doesn't get the touches. And I thought that he struggled this season when Porzingis came back in the lineup and they were fully healthy. And suddenly he doesn't have like a rhythm going here for him today. But today he was one of 3 guys that attempted at least 16 shots. That's going to probably continue to be the case for him. And it wasn't just the offensive end. He was awesome defensively as well. And that part's not a surprise, but he did kind of bounce back really well from that game 4. I've noticed whenever he has a defensive game where he struggles, he typically responds very well on that end. Like people think about offensive slumps. If he has a game where, he just doesn't have it with a certain guy, I'm thinking back to 2023 versus Jimmy Butler, who kind of went at him over and over again. He bounces back just like a shooter would bounce back after a bad game on the offensive end. So again, game 6, I expect more of the same from Derrick White. He has become one of their most reliable scorers. They're going to want to take it away. I think if you're New York, you're going to want to take away the 3-point shots. In this game, they shot the ball really well, 22 of 49, 45% from 3. They needed it, but again, they won by 25. So that's not the reason that they won this game. They didn't win because they shot lights out, right? That was helpful to them, but I think that it was a lot more than just that. But again, if you're in New York, you're going to go back and you're going to say, we got blown out twice in 5 games so far. Both of those games, they were really killed by the 3-point shot. So that's going to be a point of emphasis. But he's too good of a player. You can't really eliminate him. You can't take him out of these offensive sets. So I expect to see more of that. And that was really encouraging to see how he kind of slotted into that second star role. Number 3 thing I'm going to bring up is Luke Kornet, who honestly, it's hard to he probably should have been number 1, but he doesn't get a ton of run in the first half. He hasn't gotten a ton of run in this series or in this postseason. He played 9 minutes in game 4. And I think a lot of people were frustrated because it did look like he was just watching him. He was impacting this team much better than Porzingis has been. Porzingis is struggling right now on both ends. He's getting exploited defensively, offensively. He has no touch around the rim, missing layups, missing free throws. I don't think that he's giving them anything. I think he's a liability for them right now. And I really feel for him because this illness has just been, confusing to us, up and down. He told us after game 4, he's sleeping all day. He's trying everything, IVs, vitamins, food, diet, everything to kind of put himself in a position to help this team. And he's just not able to do that right now. But Luke Kornet is. And Luke in his minutes today, he played the entire third quarter. I was so happy to see him out there on the third quarter. I didn't know that Porzingis wasn't going to play at all, but it was obvious from his first half minutes, and he didn't play in the second quarter, but it was obvious from his first half minutes that he was helping this team, right? He finishes this game with 10 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 blocks. 7 blocks, right? I think 5 or 6 of them were in that third quarter, blocking 3-point shots, protecting the basket, didn't miss a shot, 5 of 5 around the rim. So just a perfect game from Luke Kornet. And he has this way about him. I think Al has a similar thing about him where when he's on top of his game, the way that he plays, it's always team first. It's always setting picks and trying to get other guys open. He'll get his points. He got 10 points in this one, but it's not, they're not running plays for Luke, right? He's not trying to get his. And so there's something about his personality and his kind of approach on the floor that just energizes this team. I mean, I was watching the bench reactions to every little thing that he does is just, they are mesmerized by it. And so he has this innate ability to inspire. And I think Al Horford has a similar one. And over the years, that's carried the Celtics in a lot of big moments. Luke really salvaged this game for them. In that second half, it was tied at the half. They won this one by 25. He was a massive reason why. Defensively, he impacted everything. You could, at one point, it looked like there was 3 of them out there. And then on the glass, 9 rebounds in 25 minutes. This was my biggest concern, honestly, entering this game was the rebounding, because they struggled massively on the glass in this series. There have been in critical moments, even the rebounds where they're able to secure rebounds. Every one of them has been a battle, and that's just exhausting time and again. And it's not sustainable to always be out of position or to be hoping that it's long, or Pritchard's battling Karl Anthony Towns in the post for one. Like, there were a lot of tough moments in this series. And then you lose your best rebounder, right? Tatum is their best defensive rebounder. He has been for a long time. And now he's out, right? And so everybody had to step up on that end. You saw the load kind of throughout. Jaylen Brown with 8 rebounds. Drew Holiday with 7. But Luke was a monster on the glass, and was one of many things that he did really well in this game. Shout out to Peyton Pritchard, who had 3 offensive rebounds, Jaylen Brown, who had 2, Drew Holiday, who had 2, and Luke Kornet, who had 2. So that stuff is huge. You got to neutralize Mitchell Robinson, who was really good in this one as far as free throws go. He was able to play 23 minutes. He was perfect, 6 of 6 at the line. So that is something to watch. If he has some confidence there, that might change kind of Joe's approach to foul him, because that kind of, bit them in this one. I mean, it didn't have much of an impact, but it could have if this was a closer game. But just an incredible Luke Kornet performance. And he spoke after the game. You can watch his full interview on CLNS Media. Always very reflective. Kind of talked about his confidence as a shot blocker and just kind of what these last few days have been like. And you could see that he was playing with he looked like he was on fumes, and he looked very inspired. And there was a nice moment they showed on the Jumbotron afterwards that I posted on Twitter, where Al Horford kind of went up to Jaylen and pointed to him kind of like, you led us, and then went up to Luke and kind of did a similar gesture. And those 2 guys were really the hero. Those 3 guys, the ones that I mentioned, Derrick White, Jaylen Brown, and Luke Kornet, were really the heroes in this game, and they needed heroes. And I did a pregame preview, and I said, this is Jaylen's opportunity. With Porzingis, he's either going to have to be great or they're going to have to turn to Luke. So both of those came to be. And then the third guy that I called for, and I will give this guy a shout out, it was Peyton Pritchard, who, again, continues to deliver offensively. Like, he continues to show that, A, he's not a liability on the floor. He struggled a little bit early on here with his shot, but ultimately delivers 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and hit some very timely threes. As I mentioned, 3 offensive rebounds. He was a plus 24 in this one. And he's going to continue to play a heavier load, 39 minutes off the bench for him. That's the second most minutes of any player in this game. And this is a guy that has been played 24 minutes or less in 3 of the first 4 games in the series. Now you're seeing him play more than Jaylen Brown played in this one. So the load on him is massive. I think it's going to continue to be massive. Part of why they went to him early is because Drew Holiday was in foul trouble. So they kind of made that substitution pattern earlier on. That's what Joe Mazzulla said after the game. He has kind of maintained that in the moments where Pritchard has played more. That's what he's pointed to. But at the same time, I think they're recognizing that there's an offensive upside with him that right now they need more than ever. He has been their most consistent 3-point shooter this season and continues to, even in this game, 5 of 14, definitely miss some ones that he normally makes. But listen, 5 of 14, like from 3, that's 36%. Like that's fine, right? If that's what they can get from him, they'll take that. Everybody shot well in this one. Jaylen was 3 for 5. Jaylen passed up some okay looks for much better ones. Al was 2 for 3. Derrick 7 for 13. Drew 2 for 3. Sam Hauser makes his much anticipated return, 2 of 5 from 3 in this one. He missed the last 3 games, and I think nobody was overly excited about Hauser coming back because it was happening at the same time that Tatum was on the injury report for the first time with the Achilles rupture. So it was not the most thrilling thing to see that he was upgraded to probable, but hit 2 threes in this one, ate some minutes at wing, which they're going to need. I'm kind of losing the format here, but I loved the 3-guard lineup. They ran the Pritchard, Derrick, Drew lineup a lot more than they did in the first 4 games. I'll look at the exact numbers, once those are out by the NBA, but you could see that was a new wrinkle, and they're going to have to, right? If Porzingis can't go, which right now it's kind of looking like he can't, and you don't have Tatum, like there's only so much double big that you could run. And so I liked the fact that they did that. I think right now, Drew, Derrick, and Peyton are 3 of their best players. And so you want them on the floor as much as possible. And that's going to mean that they're going to have to play together. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you saw today that that's when some of their best stretches happened. They were pushing the pace. The pace was just awesome to watch. And it all started on the defensive end. And again, Peyton is a plus defender now. Like, he really is. There's going to be moments where he gets scored on. It's basketball. It happens to everybody. But he competes like anybody else out there. Jaylen Brown really set the tone there. Luke Kornet kind of upped his physicality and rim protection, but it was everybody. Drew Holiday had some awesome plays. Derrick White. Sometimes I watch the way Derrick White recovers, where he's off ball and they're out of position and he goes and saves somebody else. Drew does the same thing. It's really just awesome to watch. But this was a defensive game, and I thought that it started. Joe really stressed it afterwards, but it started with Jaylen's defense, and that was kind of most important. And you could see it spilled over to everybody. And so I'm encouraged from this game. I'm pretty fired up about this one. This crowd was awesome. This was special. This has been an emotional couple of days. I think for me, it was emotional just watching a guy like Tatum in the middle of his prime. As he's telling us he's chasing Larry Bird and all this greatness, to see him go down like that in that much pain, to see all the people around him that are so close to him. kind of taking in what was happening in the moment. But now that the dust has settled and Tatum's had a successful surgery and everything, there are a lot of positive indicators. I spoke to an Achilles surgeon who was just so optimistic about the fact that he was able to get that procedure so soon. It's very unusual even for an NBA player to be able to get it the morning after the rupture, and he was able to do it, and he did it with the same doctor as Kevin Durant. So that's encouraging. But this team, I think they could have folded. They could have said, listen, we lost Tatum, we're down 3-1, like, let's go home. Like, this is not going to happen for us. And this was Celtics pride on the line in this one. And it was really inspiring. And it was one of my favorite games to watch. It kind of reminded me a little bit of some of the Isaiah Thomas games where it was just, they had no business competing. And they do have business competing in this series, by the way. Like, even without Tatum, I still think that they are the more talented team. And maybe that's crazy to say, but or at least they have enough talent to win any one of these games, as we saw tonight. But you could feel that this was bigger than just let's execute, right? This was passion, this was energy, this was pride. And you could feel it as a spectator. You could see I'm sitting up all the way up high, watching this game from above, from the upper press row. And I felt like the emotions were palpable. Before the game, I was in the locker room and players were energized. Like, there was not this despondent, somber feeling that I saw at Madison Square Garden. Al Horford was greeting every player by name as they came in. Players were chuckling, showing each other things on their phone. I talked to Baylor Shireman before this one. He was saying, Tatum sent them a message. It was really nice, but they were ready to go regardless. And so I'll have more written coverage on Celtics blog, which you can check out kind of as I go through what these last few days have looked like for this team, what the message was, how they kind of rallied together for one of my favorite Celtics wins ever, honestly. And I do have a little bit of recency bias, but I do think that it's pretty special to come back after such a devastating injury and to put together not just a win, but this kind of win. So I was worried this was going to be my last You Got Boston as far as post-game coverage. I'll be going through the offseason as well, but it's not. Celtics don't have anything on Thursday. If you want more Celtics content, you can watch all of the post-game interviews. Derrick White spoke after this one. Kornet spoke. Joe Mazzulla, Jaylen Brown. They all spoke after this game. And we also have a full post-game show on the Garden Report on CLNS Media, so you can check that out as well. You can subscribe to my podcast, You Got Boston Podcast, on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Leave a review, leave a rating, leave a comment. Tell me how you feel. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about this game, how you feel about this win. Do you have optimism that they can now do this again 2 more times? Does it feel like maybe they just had enough for one game, but it's not going to be sustainable? I feel much better about this situation than I did a few days ago. It's always easy after the win, but I think you saw a formula for how they can get this done again. They didn't just squeeze one out. They blew out this Knicks team, right? And I don't think they played over their heads. I think they played within themselves. So we'll see. I'm optimistic. Let me know how you feel. I'll have more coverage from Madison Square Garden. We'll do a pregame show on CLNS Media, so subscribe for that. Turn on your alerts. We'll be outside talking to fans. If you're going to be at Madison Square Garden, come say hi to us. We'll be right outside, and we'll have postgame coverage as well. So that's it for now. Thank you as always, and I hope you enjoyed the game and the show.